The Lakeside House and the Price of Betrayal. I'm Audrey, 34 years old. The lakeside house my grandfather left me was my sanctuary, my future, and my most precious treasure. But then I made a devastating discovery. My parents had secretly sold that house to fund my sister Hannah's lavish wedding. Something inside my heart shattered completely. Our family had a clear hierarchy. Hannah sat at the top, and I was somewhere far below. But this betrayal crossed a line I never imagined possible. Before we continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. What's about to happen next will shock you beyond belief. If you were in my position, what would you do? Hit that like button if you want to hear more stories about standing up to family betrayal, and subscribe to the channel. If you were in my position, what would you do? Hit that like button if you want to hear more stories about standing up to family betrayal, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button if you want to hear more stories about standing up to family betrayal, and subscribe to the channel. My grandfather was the only person in our family who truly saw me for who I was. While my parents were constantly distracted by Hannah's demands and drama, Grandpa Jack took me fishing. He taught me how to fix things. He shared stories from his childhood. "Audrey, don't you forget," Grandpa said when I was 10, teaching me how to repair an old fishing rod. Only people who value taking care of things deserve to inherit what's truly valuable. At the time, I thought it was a simple lesson. Looking back now, I realize he was teaching me something much bigger. The house sat on 3 acres of lakefront property on Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire. Grandpa had built the rustic 3-bedroom cabin with his own hands. It didn't have modern luxury, but it had a massive stone fireplace, hand-carved wooden beams, and large windows overlooking the entire lake. The dock stretched 20 feet into the water. I spent countless hours sitting at the end of it. The smell of old wood warmed by the sun, the gentle sound of water lapping beneath my feet, the occasional call of a kingfisher. All of these became one with my memories of Grandpa. The boathouse held Grandpa's old fishing boat and the canoe he taught me to paddle when I was 7. When Grandpa Jack died 6 years ago, his will clearly left the house to me alone, to my granddaughter Audrey, who understands the value of hard work and solitude. I leave the lakeside house and all its contents. I hope she finds the same peace there that I did. Pure shock appeared on my parents' faces. Mom quickly recovered, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How wonderful, Audrey. You were always Jack's favorite." The words were congratulatory, but her tone suggested I had somehow cheated. Hannah was 27 then. She's 30 now, and she didn't try to hide her emotions. But that property is worth serious money now. Why did he leave it all to Audrey? This was clearly a lie. Hannah found the lakeside house boring after a day or two. She preferred returning to civilization, where she could shop and socialize. From childhood, our family functioned like a solar system. Hannah was the sun, and the rest of us were planets orbiting around her. When Hannah wanted ballet lessons, my parents found the money. When I said I wanted to attend architecture camp, they told me to save money from babysitting jobs. When Hannah crashed her first car 3 months after getting her license, my parents bought her a new one. When I needed money for college textbooks, I had to work 2 part-time jobs. Despite this imbalance, I succeeded as an architect. I now own a small but well-regarded firm specializing in sustainable housing design. Meanwhile, Hannah jumped from job to job. Throughout her 20s, my parents subsidized her rent and repeatedly paid off her credit card debt. 3 years ago, when Hannah met James, my parents were thrilled. But what my parents chose to ignore was that James shared Hannah's financial irresponsibility. Last year, when they announced their engagement, Hannah immediately began planning what she called her dream wedding. The guest list grew from 100 to 300 people. The local country club became a luxury resort. A simple dress became a custom designer gown. I offered to help with the planning. I suggested the lakeside house could be a beautiful venue for the rehearsal dinner. Hannah looked uncomfortable with these suggestions and changed the subject every time. I thought she wanted a more glamorous setting. I never imagined the truth. Looking back now, The first signs appeared 6 months before the wedding, last December. My parents seemed increasingly stressed during family dinners. Dad, who usually loved bragging about business success, became vague when asked about work. Mom developed a new habit of checking her phone whenever money topics came up. 2 months later in February, when I asked if they were worried about wedding costs, Dad answered with forced cheerfulness, "Your sister is only getting married once. We want to make her day perfect." I offered to contribute several $1,000s, which would have strained my own budget. Mom almost accepted, but Dad interrupted. "That's very generous, Audrey, but we've got it under control." Looking back, the signs were there. I never imagined my parents would go this far, but they'd do anything to maintain the family patterns that had shaped our lives for decades. Hannah's Instagram became a showcase of luxury. A dress supposedly handmade in France for $15,000. Sample photos from photographers charging $15,000 for wedding packages. Flower arrangements, custom invitations, and weekly updates of monogrammed everything. At Sunday dinner at my parents' house in March, I casually mentioned planning to spend a long weekend at the lakeside house. I needed to do some maintenance and check on the property. "You don't need to worry about that," Mom said quickly. "Your father hired someone to take care of it." This was news to me. "Really? Who?" "I've been working with Ted Johnson for years." "Someone new," Dad answered, suddenly very interested in his mashed potatoes. "Ted retired." This was strange. When I talked to Ted 2 months earlier, he hadn't mentioned any retirement plans. The next day, I called Ted, but it went straight to voicemail. Then 3 decisive signs appeared. First, my parents had removed all the family photos showing the lakeside house from their living room walls. Mom's excuse about getting new frames was obviously unnatural. Next, at April's family dinner, Hannah appeared wearing an expensive diamond bracelet that clinked on her wrist. "An early wedding gift from Mom and Dad," she explained. That metallic sound rang like a warning bell that something was wrong. Finally, she and James booked a 3-week honeymoon in Bali and the Maldives. The next week, she replaced her perfectly functional car with a new BMW. I was certain then. Where was this money coming from? Where is all this money coming from? I asked my friend Sophia over coffee. Hannah's wedding looks like something from a celebrity magazine. And now there are all these expensive gifts too. Maybe James' family is contributing, Sophia suggested. "Didn't you say they have money?" The theory made sense until early May, when I ran into James at a local restaurant picking up takeout. He was having dinner with colleagues, and I stopped to say a quick hello. "Audrey, just the person I wanted to see," he said, giving me an unexpected hug. "I never got the chance to properly thank you for your incredibly generous contribution to the wedding." I stood there completely confused. My contribution? James suddenly looked uncomfortable, realizing he might have said something wrong. "I heard Hannah talking about how much your support means to her." He trailed off. Actually, I might have misunderstood what Hannah said. Forget I said anything. Then came that fateful day of discovery, May 15th, 3 weeks before the wedding. Dorothy Matthews, who owned the property adjacent to the lakeside house, called me. "Audrey, I wanted to check about the sale. Do you still visit sometimes? I miss seeing you around." My heart began pounding. "Dorothy, what sale are you talking about?" There was a long silence. Oh dear, I might have spoken out of turn. I immediately called the lakeside house landline. The number was no longer in service. I checked my online banking and found something even more alarming. There had been 3 failed login attempts to my main savings account. All used wrong passwords for my IP addresses I didn't recognize. At this point, I couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. Something had happened to the lakeside house, and my parents were deliberately deceiving me. I took time off work to see the property myself. The road leading to the lakeside house showed new, deeper tire tracks. The old wooden sign reading "Whitaker's Retreat" that had hung at the entrance for decades was gone. Instead of the usual scent of pine and cedar, my nostrils caught the smell of exhaust and dust. Then I saw the moving truck. A middle-aged couple stood in the driveway directing movers. The man's loud voice and the truck's engine noise shattered the usual silence. "Excuse me, this is private property," I said. "Hello, are you a neighbor?" The woman replied with a friendly smile. "No, this is my house. I'm Audrey Whitaker." The couple exchanged confused glances. The man stepped forward. "I'm Robert Peterson. There must be some misunderstanding. We purchased this property 3 weeks ago." He walked to his car and pulled out a folder of documents, handing them to me. The dry sound of paper seemed unusually loud. "We bought it from Thomas and Elizabeth Whitaker, my parents." With shaking hands, I flipped through the documents, seeing my parents' signatures on every page. And then, I saw something that froze my blood. My signature, or rather, a clumsy forgery of it. This is not my signature. I never agreed to sell this property. The Petersons looked terrified, but my conversation with the Petersons revealed an even more shocking fact. "Actually," Robert said hesitantly, "your father told us you were overseas and unreachable. He said that's why he was signing on your behalf." My blood ran cold. My parents hadn't just forged signatures. They had created an elaborate lie about me being missing. In that moment, I understood how calculated and malicious their plan truly was. I somehow made it back to my car, staring at the house that had been mine until yesterday. I sat there and cried violently, but within those tears, a new emotion was growing. Not sadness, but cold, sharp anger. At the county records office, I confirmed that the property had been sold for $375,000. This was $175,000 below the market value of $550,000. Dorothy called me back. "About a month ago, I ran into your parents at the grocery store. I overheard them talking about using the lakeside house money for Hannah's wedding. Your father specifically said they needed to handle it before you found out." My next call was to Stephanie, my friend who works as a real estate attorney. "They forged my signature, Steph. They sold my house to pay for Hannah's wedding. That's not just unethical, Audrey. It's criminal. Forgery, fraud, theft, you name it. Can we meet somewhere? You shouldn't be alone right now." Stephanie reviewed the documents I brought and confirmed my worst fears. "This is clear-cut, Audrey. Your parents had no legal right to sell the property. The forged signature is obvious fraud. Hannah's wedding is in 3 weeks. I don't want to detonate this bomb before then. After what they did to you, you're going to let them continue the wedding using your money? If I confront them now, it becomes chaos. The focus becomes saving the wedding, not what they did. After the wedding, there's nowhere to hide." Over the next week, I documented every aspect of the fraud. Dorothy provided a written statement about the conversation she overheard. I found the notary who confirmed she never notarized these documents and that her stamp had been forged. Most damning were Hannah's online posts about wedding expenses, which directly correlated with amounts my parents withdrew from their account after the house sale. In one post, she shared photos of her $15,000 dress on the same day my parents withdrew that exact amount. The engagement party was held at the 5-star Langham Hotel in Boston. The hotel was transformed with thousands of white orchids, crystal chandeliers, and ice sculptures. The moment I entered, the smell of expensive perfume and orchid flowers hit me. Hannah rushed over, glowing, the silk of her dress rustling with each step. "Audrey, isn't this amazing?" I found my parents near the actual flowing champagne fountain. The sound of flowing champagne and clinking glasses was constant. They were talking to a wedding planner. "The fireworks display will add $20,000 to the budget," the planner was saying. Dad nodded. "Hannah deserves the best. Are you sure, Tom? We're already way over budget." Mom touched his arm. "It's fine. We covered the essentials with the house money." I felt sick. House money. My house money. Hannah tapped a spoon against her glass, the metallic sound echoing through the room. "James and I want to thank everyone who came to celebrate with us tonight, and especially our wonderful parents who made our dream wedding possible." All eyes turned to me as the room erupted in applause. "Thank you for the wedding gift," Dad called out. They were publicly thanking me for a gift I never gave, for money stolen through fraud and forgery. The audacity was breathtaking. But this time, it was different from the morning tears. This was calculated, strategic anger. and Patricia cornered me about the sad news of selling the lakeside house. Knowing how much it meant to you, what a wonderful sister you are to make such a sacrifice for Hannah's happiness. Every word revealed more of the story my parents had constructed. I eventually encountered my parents. The lakeside house sold quickly, I said, watching their faces carefully. Mom's smile faltered for just a moment. Have you been there recently? I met the new owners, the Petersons. My parents exchanged a quick glance. Strange, I don't remember putting it on the market. Audrey, this isn't the time or place for this topic. You're right. We'll have plenty of time later. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Even nature seemed to conspire to give Hannah her ideal day. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. at St. John's Episcopal Church, followed by a reception at Rosewood Estate, one of the area's most exclusive venues. I arrived early for bridesmaid photos, wearing the pale pink gown Hannah had chosen. The photographer arranged us on the church steps, repositioning us for perfect composition. I maintained my fake smile as camera shutters clicked. Hannah stood in the center, her custom French gown rustling with silk sounds as she moved. It had a 15-foot train and delicate beadwork that took craftsmen hundreds of hours to complete. The sweet smell of expensive perfume surrounded her. Throughout the photo session, I mentally cataloged the costs to maintain my composure. Hannah's dress, $15,000. Professional hair and makeup for bridal party, $3,000. Photography and videography package, $15,000. Church flowers, $8,000. Custom invitation design, $2,500. Each item represented another piece of my stolen property. Memories of the lakeside house converted into short-lived wedding decorations. The ceremony itself was lavish with a string quartet, professional opera singer, and custom-written vows. The opera singer's beautiful voice echoed off the church ceiling. The delicate tones of violins created the perfect emotional backdrop. Hannah cried beautifully and on cue, somehow keeping her makeup perfect. James looked handsome and sophisticated in his designer tuxedo. My parents glowed proudly from the front row, the proud architects of this perfect day. I mechanically performed my bridesmaid duties. I held Hannah's bouquet during the ring exchange, adjusted her train when needed, and smiled for photos. Inside, I felt only cold determination. After the ceremony, guests were transported to Rosewood Estate in a fleet of vintage Rolls-Royce cars. Engine sounds hummed elegantly, and I could hear tires crunching on gravel roads. The estate was transformed with thousands of flowers, twinkling lights, and elegant draping. The cocktail hour featured an open bar, caviar stations, and the same champagne fountain from the engagement party. I circulated among guests, accepting congratulations on behalf of my sister. I deflected questions about the lake house with vague responses. Dinner was served in the estate's grand ballroom, each table featuring elaborate centerpieces of orchids and roses. The menu included Wagyu beef, butter poached lobster, and desserts topped with gold leaf. The constant sounds of forks touching china plates and glasses being set on tables filled the air. A 10-piece band performed on a custom-built stage, with professional dancers hired to encourage guests onto the dance floor. During the toasts, Dad stood and raised his glass. "To my beautiful daughter Hannah and her wonderful new husband James," he said. "Dear mother, and I couldn't be prouder. We spared no expense to make this day perfect for you, because you deserve the best." The crowd applauded enthusiastically. I avoided smiling by taking a long sip of champagne. Hannah's maid of honor gave a touching speech about friendship. Then James' best man shared funny stories about the groom. Finally, Hannah herself stood up, slightly tipsy from champagne. "I want to thank everyone who made this day possible," she said, her voice choking with emotion. "My wonderful parents who gave me everything I wanted. My amazing new husband who I love more than anything. And my sister Audrey, who made the biggest sacrifice of all." She turned to look at me. "I know how much that lakeside house meant to you. The fact that you gave it up for my special day means more than words can express." The room erupted in applause. I felt dozens of eyes on me, expecting some response. Not trusting myself to speak, I lightly raised my glass and nodded. As the night progressed, Alcohol flowed freely, and the dance floor filled up. The music got louder, and laughter became more frequent. Cake cutting, first dance, father-daughter dance. Everything unfolded as planned. I stayed on the periphery, observing it all with the detached interest of an anthropologist studying an unfamiliar culture's rituals. Around midnight, with the party still in full swing, my parents cornered me near the dessert table. "You've been quiet all day," Mom said, her words slightly slurred from wine. "Aren't you having fun?" "It's a beautiful wedding," I replied neutrally. "Money can buy the best," Dad said with a wink. "Or should I say, lakeside house money can buy the best." He laughed at his own joke. "We haven't properly thanked you," Mom added, squeezing my arm, "for understanding about the house. It was really the only way to give Hannah the wedding she wanted." I looked at these two people, the people who raised me, who acknowledged stealing from me as casually as commenting on the weather. In that moment, everything crystallized. Their hypocrisy, my stolen dreams, and my counterattack beginning tomorrow. A strange calm came over me, like the quiet before a storm. "You should check your mail tomorrow." I said it with a light smile. Dad frowned. "Why?" Silence fell. The music continued, but time seemed to stop around us. "There's some information I think you'll find interesting," I said. "Enjoy the rest of the evening." I walked away, leaving them with confused expressions. It was the only satisfying moment I'd felt all day. The wedding concluded with a grand sparkler send-off. Hannah and James departed for their 3-week honeymoon in Bali in a vintage Bentley. Guests threw rose petals and cheered as the car drove away. The sound of the engine fading into the distance sounded like a countdown to me. My parents stood arm in arm, looking tired but victorious. I returned to my apartment and texted Stephanie. "Wedding complete. Proceeding as planned tomorrow." The next morning at exactly 9 a.m., a courier delivered the legal package to my parents' house. It contained forged documents, witness statements, bank records showing fund transfers, and legal notice of action being taken to reverse the sale and investigate fraud. The sound of opening that envelope must have shattered their quiet morning. At the same time, I emailed my letter to both parents. "What you did was not just illegal. It was a deep betrayal of trust. The lakeside house was my sanctuary, my dreams. You took it from me without asking, forged my name, and lied to everyone. The wedding will proceed as planned, but once it's over, there will be a reckoning." Starting at 9:15 a.m., my phone began ringing. The sound echoed through my apartment, but I sent every call to voicemail. At 1 p.m., I received a call from an international number. Hannah was calling from her honeymoon. Even over the phone, I could hear her crying and ocean sounds in the background. "How could you be so selfish, suing them the day after my wedding?" "Hannah, they forged my signature and sold my house. Did you know about this?" There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing over the phone line. "I knew they were using money from selling the lakeside house, but they said you agreed to it." "Your marriage has nothing to do with stealing my property." Hannah started crying. "You're ruining everything. This is a situation Mom and Dad created, not me." The next day, when we arrived at my parents' house, I was surprised to find not just my parents waiting, but also Hannah and James, obviously back early from their honeymoon, plus Uncle Steve and Aunt Patricia. The doorbell rang unusually loud. Dad looked shocked to see me enter with Stephanie. "Who is this?" "This is my attorney. Wherever I go regarding this matter, she goes. When you committed fraud, this stopped being just a family discussion." The room fell into uncomfortable silence. Only the ticking of the clock could be heard. Dad tried a different approach. "There was a misunderstanding about the lakeside house. We thought we had your implicit consent. You forged my signature, sold my property, and took my money." "Which part was a misunderstanding?" I connected my laptop to their TV and presented the evidence. Forged documents, bank records showing fund transfers, timeline of intentional deception. Everything over 30 minutes. The sounds of keyboard clicking and presentation audio filled the room. When I finished, the room was dead silent. Someone sniffling was the only sound. "Do you understand what you've done? You betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way. For what? Dad opened his mouth, his voice shaking. We made a terrible mistake. We got obsessed with giving Hannah the wedding she wanted. Hannah looked up, sobbing as she spoke. I didn't know they forged your signature. They said you agreed to sell the lakeside house to help with the wedding. You've always been the responsible one, the one who makes sacrifices. That last sentence revealed how the long-established pattern had enabled this situation. I want my house back. I want all the money taken from me returned with interest and damages. I want public acknowledgement of what you did and apologies to everyone you lied to. And I want both of you to get counseling to understand why you thought this was acceptable. As for criminal charges, I don't want to see you in prison. But what you did is a crime, and there may be consequences beyond my control. We always favored Hannah, Mom said quietly, her voice trembling. Audrey was so capable, so independent, and we took her for granted. That's no excuse for theft. We failed you, Audrey. We're so sorry. It will take time to fix this, and things between us will never be the same. That's the real price of what you've done. The legal aftermath unfolded over the next 6 months. The lakeside house sale was voided, with a court ruling that forged documents cannot transfer legal ownership. The Petersons were understandably upset, but ultimately settled with a compensation package covering all moving costs, legal fees, and additional damages for the inconvenience. They showed generous and understanding attitudes, acknowledging that the situation wasn't my fault. My parents had to liquidate everything and take out a home equity loan. The repayment included the original $550,000 property value, plus $50,000 in interest. They paid me back every penny, $675,000 total, plus $75,000 in damages. They paid me back every penny, $675,000 total. Through a deal with the district attorney, they barely avoided criminal prosecution with conditions including 200 hours of community service, financial restitution, and mandatory counseling. The lakeside house returned to my ownership, though not without emotional complexity. When I first visited after regaining ownership, I sat on the dock for hours, reconnecting with the property and processing everything that had happened. The sound of water gently lapping against the dock posts, wind moving through the pine trees. These familiar sounds welcomed me back. The space felt somehow different, tainted by betrayal, yet still fundamentally mine. I felt Grandpa Jack's presence and understood the true value of what he had left me. It wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of independence and dignity. I spent that summer restoring both the physical and spiritual aspects of the lakeside house. The sounds of changing locks, electric drills, opening paint cans. These work sounds became part of my healing process. I updated the kitchen that had barely changed since Grandpa Jack's time, repainted walls, and restored floors. I also repaired the old fishing boat in the boathouse and applied fresh varnish to the canoe. Each improvement felt like reclaiming the space, making it mine again. My relationship with my family entered a new phase. Hannah and I initially had awkward, infrequent, tense conversations. After learning the truth, she returned most of her wedding gifts. Though she and James remained married, their honeymoon was cut short, and their fairy tale beginning was permanently tainted. In one of our rare phone calls, Hannah finally asked the question that had been bothering her. I could hear her shaking voice over the phone. If they had asked directly, "Would you have helped with the wedding? Would you have voluntarily sold the lakeside house?" I considered the question carefully. No, I finally said. The lakeside house was never something to give up for a wedding. It was Grandpa Jack's legacy, his life's work. He entrusted it to me because he knew I valued it for what it was, not for what I could convert it into. I might have donated some money to the wedding, but the house was never an option. Hannah was quiet for a moment. I could hear her sigh on the other end of the phone. I think I always knew that, she admitted. That's probably why I didn't question their story more deeply. It was easier to believe you had agreed than face the truth. My parents and I established a careful distance. We talk once a month and occasionally meet for brief meals. But the old, easy familiarity is gone. They continue counseling, gradually confronting the damage and patterns that led to their actions. We always thought we were doing what was best for both of you," Mom said in one of our difficult conversations. Her voice had become smaller, more careful than before. "Hannah seemed to need more support, more attention, more resources. You were so capable, so independent, and we told ourselves it somehow balanced out. It was never balanced," I replied. "You used my independence as permission to give Hannah everything. Being self-reliant became a punishment." Dad nodded slowly. "I see that now. We failed you, Audrey, not just with the lakeside house, but throughout your life. We took your strength for granted instead of nurturing it." These conversations were painful but necessary. They represented the first honest exchange we'd ever had about the family dynamics that shaped our lives. 6 months after the wedding, Hannah and James welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Emma. The birth created an opportunity for careful reconciliation, feeling the complex emotions of family bonds despite deep wounds. Visiting them at the hospital, holding my small niece, and hearing the baby's tiny breathing sounds, I felt the complexity of family connections. "I want her to know her aunt," Hannah said, looking down at the baby in a whisper. "I want her to know about the lakeside house and Grandpa Jack's legacy. I want different things for her than we had." This was the closest thing to a real apology I'd received from my sister, an acknowledgement that patterns needed to change for the next generation. 2 years after the wedding, I invited my parents to the lakeside house for the first time since the incident. It was a short visit, just an afternoon, but an important step. They walked through the renovated space, noting the changes I'd made while respecting the house's original character. The new kitchen counters harmonized perfectly with Grandpa's original woodwork. Updated appliances improved functionality without compromising the house's rustic charm. Their footsteps echoed on the newly polished floors. "Jack would be proud of what you've done here," Dad said quietly, running his hand over the original hand-carved woodwork. "He always said you understood the value of this place in a way no one else did." Mom paused in front of Grandpa Jack's framed photo, prominently displayed in the living room. The photo showed him teaching young me to fish on the dock. "We lost sight of what was important," she said, her voice trembling. "We got caught up in appearances and Hannah's demands and our own anxieties as parents. We forgot that some things have value that can't be measured in money. That's what we tried to take from you." Their visit wasn't complete reconciliation or complete forgiveness, but it was recognition that healing is a process, not an event. Some trust might eventually be rebuilt, but our relationship would never return to what it was before. Perhaps that was for the best. The new relationship was more honest, more equal, based on mutual respect. The most important lesson I learned through this ordeal was about the nature of boundaries. For years, I had allowed my family to exploit my independence and resilience. I accepted less while Hannah received more, telling myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need their support or approval. But in doing so, I had enabled the very dynamic that ultimately led to the theft of my inheritance. My understanding was actually interpreted as implicit permission for them to ignore my rights. Standing up for myself wasn't just about getting the lakeside house back. It was about reclaiming my place in the family story, about clearly stating that I mattered too, that my needs mattered, that my inheritance mattered, that my boundaries mattered. Sometimes, saying no to people we love doesn't destroy relationships. It actually saves them, because it builds a foundation of real mutual respect. 3 years after the wedding, I stood on the dock at sunset, watching light dance on the lake's surface, the shimmer of light reflecting off the water, the distant call of loons, the quiet sound of my own breathing. Everything was filled with peace. The lakeside house was completely mine again, in every sense. I had protected it, reclaimed it, restored it, and was creating new memories within its walls. These days, I invite friends for weekends and teach them to fish, just as Grandpa Jack did for me. The house lives again, filled with laughter and conversation, but this time on my own terms. The sound of fishing lines cutting through water, friends' laughter, preparing dinner. These are all sounds of new, healthy memories. Grandpa Jack's legacy continued not just in the physical structure, but in the strength he saw in me long before I recognized it myself. His words about understanding the value of hard work and solitude now have new meaning. It wasn't just about working or being alone. It was about knowing your worth and having the courage to protect it. This brings me to a question for you. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who crossed an important boundary? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about family dynamics and personal growth. And share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to protect what's rightfully theirs. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most important relationship we need to honor is the one we have with ourselves.